Hello and welcome to another episode of Staying Power, a show that is all about building a better life. In whatever way you think we mean that, we do mean that. And we come here every week to talk about one small part of that. We hope that it resonates with you and you can apply it in your own life, all in the name of just making things better for you and for everyone around you. And by we, I mean myself, JDK and my lovely co-host, the one who always brings a bright light into every room, even when it's already bright,
Aww.
Ashley Kniebel. Hello, Ashley.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great.
Yeah?
I'm actually answering that for real for once.
For once?
Well,
You've lied the entire time?
No,
of
I
course
would
not.
never.
You wouldn't.
No. Well, let me preface, or let me give you some details. So you always ask me, how am I doing?
Uh-huh.
And if everyone really follows the show, they always know that I'm doing great, which for the most part I am. But, you know, there are some times where that's like your knee-jerk reaction.
Sure.
And then
Just
if
to
you
say great.
Yeah, it's just a dismissive response, and not to dismiss what you're asking, but it's just like, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm great. You know, it's a very quick, like a pleasantry,
Right.
almost.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to stop and think like, are you? Because how was things like 20 minutes before you got on the air? Like that was not so great. So, but I'm great in the moment, but in the longer scheme, grander scheme of things, maybe I wasn't so great. So,
Right. Okay. Well, I'm glad you answered that way because that is actually what we are going to talk about today. We are going to be talking about this question, how are you? And how we tend to ask that almost as a form of greeting with an expectation of that's what we're supposed to ask when we see somebody. Mm-hmm. And they may have the expectation they're supposed to respond with a positive response, whether that is actually truthful or not, almost in a way of greeting. And we're going to explore a little bit because we've had some experiences lately with this, that sometimes actually all the time, it's better to go in meaning to answer that way. And of course, on the flip side, go into something like that, meaning to answer truthfully, even if it's uncomfortable. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So thank you, Ashley, for doing that. Now, I do want to say that it does seem like even when you've had tough times coming in before the episode, once you get in here, you just seem to get a little rollicky. You seem to be doing okay.
Rollicky?
Yeah, I don't even know if that's a word.
I was going to say, did you just make up a word?
I don't know.
Usually
Things are rollicking. Things can be rollicking, like, woo, really kind of fun and that type of thing. But you seem to be doing all right.
Well, I pride myself in having the ability to compartmentalize things to an extent.
Sure.
I feel like I can waffle things
There's
up a
a
bit.
healthy version of that. Sure.
Yeah. You know, and so you got like all your little squares, and I leave work and life, and why are you laughing?
No, little squares.
Like waffles.
Yeah.
You know, you leave it there, and then I come in here, and I'm very present here, and this brings me a lot of joy and happiness. Mm-hmm. So this is great.
Good. Well, I'm doing well too. Not that you asked.
Oh yeah, how are you doing? It's always about me.
I am sleepy today. I'm tired today, but that's okay. It's from all good things.
Were you rollicking too much?
No, working a lot. So that's okay. I've got my self-care plan in place. So I'm doing all right. All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this because this is something that when it came up as a potential topic was coming from a really interesting conversation you had with a person. And so how much of that context do you want to share? And for listeners, think about as we're going forward, when was the last time you asked someone in your life, even if it's the checker at the grocery store or, somebody you just pass, randomly, or somebody close to you, when was the last time you asked them from a real place of intention, wanting to know the answer, how are you? Just be thinking about that because, Ashley, you had an experience where this happened recently, and it was pretty profound, it seems like.
Yeah, you're right. I did. And I'm happy to share as much as this with the audience as I can. Let me preface, this was not a client of mine. And this is why it's such a unique situation, because it was somebody that I had seen, I don't know, probably like 6 or 8 months ago. And at the time, she shared with me we were just talking, and somebody that I know in just a professional manner. But like I said, not a client, just through another form of work. And she was going through a rough time. Her husband recently at that point had lost his job, and, they were approaching some tough things, and they weren't sure how to what to embrace, right? Because they're just like, we got notice this is going to happen. And, we assume for the next few months it's going to be a little rocky, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she was nervous and she was trying to prepare as much as she can. They have 2 kids and whatnot. And that was the last time I had seen her, was 6 or 8 months ago. And then I saw her again recently. And I just asked, like, hey, I remember last time I saw you, this is what you shared. How are things going? And I was asking, yes, to be nice. I do care to an extent about this person. So I was genuinely asking, like, how are you doing? Because that seems like a really tough situation. And she, like, welled up in tears and started explaining and how horrible actually things have gotten for them in so many different ways since then. Kind of like everything in life has now fallen apart.
Oof.
Kids are taking it rough. Her health is starting to decline, and things between her and her partner are starting to get really rocky just because the whole household is under so much stress of everything and trying to find a job and support, and kids don't get it and whatnot. And
spending money they don't have, or they do have, but it's for
right,
something else.
or they're trying not to, and then the kids don't get it because all their friends get to do things and they're the only ones who are not. And, and she's trying to stay really strong for her kids, but also her husband. And she feels like now she's becoming actually more of a burden. Just was like really frustrated. And, there's no manual for how you deal with this stuff. Right. And she started crying, not because of how difficult it was, but because I asked her how she was doing, I guess. And I did not expect this reaction out of her. And it was really touching for me to see that it mattered to her so much. So she's like, some people know what's going on, but she's like, you're one of them. And she's like, but no one takes any time to ask how we're doing, doesn't check in. And she's like, everyone has their lives and whatnot. But she's like, I was never going to expect somebody that I see so infrequently remember something like this and actually take time out of their day to ask how I'm doing.
Wow. So when she responded that way, how was that for you?
Touching, because did
it catch you off? Did it catch you off guard
totally.
initially? Okay.
Yeah. Because to me, I'm like, it was like a no-brainer to ask, because I'm like, I care about this person and they're going through something genuinely difficult, and it's very relatable right now what they're going through. And I just wanted to extend the small gift of like, hey, there is literally nothing that I can do to help you, but I care, and I just want to open up the space and ask how you are and just let you know that someone's thinking about you. And it meant so much to her. And the fact that it meant so much to her was almost like a gift in return to me. I was like, wow, I really just did something for this person who is struggling so much. And I didn't know I could do that. It was cool.
That is cool. And it doesn't, so often in my experience, no one's really asking for a solution.
Right.
It ties in, what comes up for me is it ties into our conversation last week in our last episode about holding space. Right. So you were holding space in that moment, or it became clear as soon as she started welling up in tears, you probably were going to have to, need to
grab the tissues, hold some space.
Try and do that, hold that space. And so and you had some intentionality. I think that's the word that keeps coming to mind, right? You had remembered, right? Which meant you'd been present enough the first time to remember. I know what your professional life looks like. You meet a lot of people. In your professional capacity, people are going past you all day, every day, and you are going past other people on those other days where you're not doing that.
Fair.
So the intentionality of remembering that from 6 to 8 months ago is part of, I'm not sure there is a clear answer to any of what we're going to talk about, but that's one thing, right? The intentionality of remembering those things. And there is intention to remembering, I think, if we really want to do it well. But then also, this brings this question up for me of, why do we not do that very much? Why are all these other people know what's going on, right? She said some people know what's going on, but why is no one asking, right? Is it a cultural thing? and by culture, I don't necessarily mean ethnic culture. I mean, societal culture, right? A group culture, peer culture, whatever it might be, some combination of that. Is it just a form of habit? We just have our own stuff. We keep things to ourselves. We say, nobody else needs to be burdened with this. I hear that quite a bit from some people in my circles. Or is it a form of self-protection, or is it all of that? Whether it's the person not asking, are they self-protecting? Is it culture? Is it not? Mm-hmm. And then if a person doesn't answer, that doesn't mean that they have to answer anybody who asks them the same way.
Right.
Right? Because that might be maybe oversharing, or, what are you hoping to get out of that? But I do wonder about those things, because we do throw that question around quite a bit. I actually, on my drive in, I thought back today, how many times did I ask the question, how are you, in my interactions with people? 14.
Wow.
And I don't know if, knowing this was coming today, by the way, okay. I asked 14 times today, and I'm trying to remember, how was I ready for a response that was beyond I'm doing great, right? I think in a couple cases I was, or at least I was intentional there, but it's very much a thing, right? It's very much a habit, right?
And I don't know where it has come from.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, there are a lot of different facets to this, right? Like maybe you're like, I'm really struggling, but I do not have the time to go through this. Or when you're asking the question, you're like, I don't have time to sit here for 20 minutes and listen to somebody vent about something. So
right. Like,
how do
boy.
I, right. Like, how do I show that I care and I want to know how they're doing, but now is not the appropriate time for me to sit and listen to, if it's something really heavy or whatever. Because that is kind of the thing, is when you're asking the question, you have no idea what's actually going to come back to you.
You don't.
You don't know. Now,
don't.
I think we are so quick to ask the question because it's become like a common pleasantry, but we assume it's going to be just a quick knee-jerk response.
Which is kind of funny, because in light of what the world we live in right now, with all the differing opinions and all the images and all the things flying at us, all the conflict, all the disagreement, you'd think our baseline starting point might be probably things aren't necessarily across the board. I do think sometimes in that case, it's, people trying to fake it to make it, right?
Sure.
Like, okay, things are really tough. Things are really uncertain. This A, B, and C all the way down to Z are really bothering me. However, everybody has that in common. So I'm just going to be like,
yeah, what makes me so special that I can talk about it?
Right. Exactly.
As opposed to everybody else that's walked through this door
Why would
today.
somebody care?
Yeah. Why would somebody care to hear about my problems?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a complicated mix of all those things. And of course, I think it also depends on who's the person we're talking about. We know those people in our workplace, maybe in our families, maybe in our own homes, who, once you ask them a question, it's like winding them up and watching them go, right? I happen to be one of those people sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are
yeah.
you?
If somebody asks me how I'm doing, I'm going to tell them. Right. And
I was going to ask you that.
Take a while.
Have you been in a situation where it's not like a friendly, common person you see, but maybe somebody is like bringing up your groceries or, something, and you're at a bookstore, maybe a little less crowded than a grocery store.
Right.
And they're like, how are you doing today? Have you had that feeling where you're like, if only this person knew? I don't know if I'm going to tell them or not. Maybe I won't be able to say I'm doing all right.
Yes.
What do you normally do with that?
Wow. It probably depends. Yes, it has happened quite a bit. It probably depends on the context and where I need to go next, how much time I have, those types of things. I always try to, my mantra is I want to answer honestly, even if it's not this big emotionally laden thing. So if I've had a challenging day, I tend to say that. I said, well, it's been a challenging day, but this is helping, right? Getting a cup of coffee, if that's the case. Or buying a book, or I might make a joke of it. Well, been a tough day, so rather than dwell on that, I'm going to buy a book.
That's
that
a really good way of answering
that kind of thing. Or sometimes the answer, if I'm having a really tough time, will be I've been better. I've also been worse, as long as that's the case, and usually it is.
Sure.
Right? And so I have that measuring stick for myself. It's like, okay, have I felt worse than this? Yes. Okay. So I try to be honest. And what's interesting about that is almost without exception, that other person, even if it's somebody I don't really know, or it's just this transactional passing by, usually has something really kind or helpful or a look on their face that is a moment of connection somewhere in there, right? Or a moment of honesty, even if it's something, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And, I actually, the last time I used the book example, I actually did do that. And she says, well, I think that's a good choice. And if you want to feel even better, we have all these books on sale.
Oh my gosh.
Which made me laugh, right? Which made me laugh. I was like, okay.
Cute.
I said, that's nice sales tactic. Way to upsell me or try to upsell me. It was great. And it led to this laughing moment.
Funny.
And then if I remember correctly, she said, in all seriousness, I hope things get better. And I said, thanks. That type of thing. I think that's the key. When we ask, do we mean it? And when we are asked, to answer honestly. Now, for me, I think those answers usually come pretty quickly, right? You know this. I tend to think quick on my feet. But I do try to not deflect it with humor, and I can do that a lot.
Sure.
So I try, if I'm going to use humor, I want to add that in as a way of saying, hey, not great, and I'm trying to keep some perspective on it, because I think everybody understands that. We're feeling bad. We don't really want to feel the way we feel. We're trying to keep some larger perspective, but sometimes it's tough.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that, like you said, there is two sides of that. It's asking with intention because you care and you're genuinely wanting to inquire about the person on the other side of you. Or when they ask is, do I genuinely want to answer this?
Correct.
Do I feel comfortable doing that? I like the way that you did it because it alludes enough and it leaves it almost open-ended for them if they want to inquire more and be like, you said you're going through something rough. What's going on? Or if they're like, A, I don't have time, B, I'm not interested, or C, I don't actually know how to respond to something like that, then they can,
they can
sell you on books and then
they can
hope it gets better.
Yeah, and it's not to say, I want to make sure right before we go to break here, I want to make sure we emphasize that if you kind of have a more surface asking of that or answering, doesn't mean there's something wrong.
No.
Sometimes that is how things work out.
Well, that's sometimes the appropriate thing.
Sometimes it is because of the time you have or the bandwidth you have or who it might be.
Well, you're not under an obligation to serve every person you show up.
Correct. Right. Absolutely. Right. I mean, life happens, right? So we're just talking about to what degree can we be integrating more this notion of intentionality, almost being intentional to be intentional more often, right? In this, because it can lead to moments that are really eye-opening for us. It can lead to a moment of connection that I think can really sustain someone in a moment more than they think. And you put out possibilities for somebody, maybe in yourself or the person you're interacting with, of a way of reframing something or feeling a little bit better in the moment, which might make all the difference in that moment for them moving forward for the rest of the day, or maybe it's the beginning of turning a corner. You never know, right? Which is why I think it's so important to do, because we know what the alternative is. Everybody just silos up, doesn't share anything. Exactly. Okay. All right. When we come back from our first break here on Staying Power, we will talk a little bit more about, what are the things that get in the way of us asking this and maybe answering it effectively, and explore it a little bit more. And, of course, later on in the show, stay tuned for our 2 minutes segment, which this week is 2 minutes of triumph. That'll be a little later in the show. But come on back for more conversation about how are you? See you back here in a minute.
Are you ready to discover remarkable stories of resilience and cultural connection? This is Diaspora, a show sharing the journeys of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent now building their lives in North America. Inspiring, insightful, and always engaging, Diaspora offers a unique perspective on the immigrant experience. Join me, Aditya Mehta, my guests, on the Diaspora Show every Wednesday at 2 p.m. right here on KKNW.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with Ashley.
Hello.
Talking about this question we literally ask and hear every single day. How are you? Kind of doing a deep dive into that. And we suggested that there's more to it than meets the eye or the ear. So we'll dive back to that in a minute. And so first of all, thank you for joining us wherever you are catching us right now. If you're catching us live at our radio home, 1150 AM KKNW, we hope you're doing well wherever you happen to be. If you're catching this as a podcast, and you can get this as a podcast wherever you get your podcast, thank you so much for subscribing and for listening to all of our episodes and sharing them with your circles. We appreciate that very much. And if you're watching on the live stream, hello. First of all, it's good to see you. Feel free to comment anytime. Just be nice. And you can certainly find at the show notes for all these places I just listed all the ways in which you can interact with Ashley and I. Our email is stayingpowershow@gmail.com. You can also find our social media links and reach out to us there. Okay. So, Ashley, this question, really a poignant example you used before the break about this person you met and how all that happened. Let's talk a little bit about perhaps why we don't either really ask or either aren't prepared to hear the answer to that question, or we aren't prepared to honestly answer that question. Let's talk about it from both sides of the equation. In the case you talked about, you asked with intention, right? Willing to hear the answer because you knew things hadn't been too good for this person last before.
Yep.
And she decided, maybe in a moment without realizing she was deciding, that this was the time to do that. And she even pointed out to you, nobody's asked. You're the first person to ask in a long time. Let's talk a little bit about, based on our experience and what we've seen with clients in our own life, why don't we ask or answer from a position of that, and how can we start?
Sure. I mean, if I were to reflect a little bit, because, you have asked that. You counted in the last segment. You said you counted 14 times you have asked different people today.
15 if we include the front of the show. And I did mean it.
15 times. So far, and the day is still young.
The day's not over.
So you probably have so many more people to ask, which that's in one day. So you think over the years, how many times we've asked this question? So I think, like, in my earlier days when I was younger, obviously, if I'm working in the service industry, then you're asking people all the time, how are you? How are you? How are you? And back then, I do remember times when people would kind of lay something heavy out.
Yeah.
And I was young and inexperienced, and it was almost awkward for me because I didn't know what to say. I knew deep down I really wanted to say something that was meaningful or helpful or something for that person, but I was like, I don't know what to say. I'm not experienced. I don't even know what that means. Like, because I was younger, and there was and I've since learned now that I've grown up that you can still say that. Like, I don't have any words that I feel that will help this situation, but I really care about you. And I just hope you're going to be okay. Like having
words
like
right there,
right. But like as a younger person, you're like, that didn't do anything. I didn't offer them a solution, because when we're younger, we think solution oriented is how it's going to help that person. But now as I've gotten older and more experienced with clients and just day to day with people and all the different circumstances I meet people in, it's sometimes just being very present, showing eye contact and actual uninterrupted focus of, I hear you and I see you right now and I care enough to ask. And I don't have an answer for you, but you also don't expect me to have one.
Right.
And that's what
if you do, I don't have one.
Because I mean, like, come on. Do people really like dump all their problems and then be like, okay, you asked how I was, so now what? No.
Usually not.
Usually they don't.
Right.
Unless you're like a lawyer. And then you might. But in our circumstance, no.
Yeah. But that a lawyer's conversation in the way you're talking about is in a courtroom, right? Not necessarily
different.
Or in a deposition. Right.
But, and so I'm like, I think sometimes people hesitate to ask. I mean, they might see somebody that they're like, they are seriously not okay. Visually, it's okay. It's obvious.
It's clear.
It's very clear. I'm afraid to ask because I don't know what to do with their answer. Or I don't know what they're going to do when they respond. And I don't know how to handle that situation.
Yeah. And the phrase we hear most often when we tell ourselves in that situation is, I'm not sure I'll have the right words, quote unquote, the right words. And for me, as both a writer and somebody who speaks for a living, it's a good reminder that words are supposed to be the verbal communication of how we are feeling and what we are thinking at any given moment. We get to choose to what degree we want to be honest with that about it. Now, if we don't really know how we feel, right, or we're mixed up in our thinking, the words we can use are exactly that, which is what you're just pointing out.
Yep.
Right? That takes a sense of awareness of oneself, right?
Yes, it does.
In order to do that. If and that could be something where you're not always really good at on your feet in a moment like that.
Mm-hmm.
So words where you can express your empathy, or words where you can express your support, or your opinion. Wow, that sounds really hard. I wish I knew what to say.
Mm-hmm.
That's an honest use of words.
Yes.
The right words is usually, and this is a word that I don't use lightly, and I want everybody to take this in a gentle way. Right words is actually opens the door to manipulation. You're trying to manipulate an answer to help somebody feel good,
Mm-hmm.
or to help yourself feel not awkward,
Mm-hmm.
right? We hear those phrases all the time. Don't make it weird, right? Or, got to keep things moving. Those are that's using words to avoid something,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or to give the impression that you have to have the right words, as if somehow your words can perform miracles by themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the words that are the most impactful, in my experience, are the ones that are expressing exactly what you're thinking and feeling, even if you don't know what you're thinking
Yes.
and feeling. And then ratcheting back to, I really care about what's going on. And if anything comes up that you think I can help with,
Mm-hmm.
I really hope you'll ask.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's going to look in varying degrees, because I am extremely comfortable with myself, and I have a lot of confidence in myself to know that I can think fine on my feet.
Sure.
And probably can handle a good portion of things that are
Yeah, you're very good
thrown
at
at my direction.
You are very good at it. I've hit you out of the blue with not doing so well.
you.
You've done a great job. And vice versa, right? You've brought that to me where I wasn't seeing it coming.
That's true.
Yeah.
And so there are some times if people are not that assured and confident in themselves, then there are varying degrees of what they can handle or what they're willing to ask of somebody. Because
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's okay. You don't want to step into a situation where you're really not comfortable, and then all of a sudden you ask them how they're doing. You're like,
right.
This got so far out of
Right.
the realm of anything
or
that
you give advice and they get upset, or they
yes,
shut down.
yeah,
you
right.
accidentally
And
make something
and you're
worse.
just trying to be kind and give a heartfelt opinion or something,
Mhm.
and that is the worst thing for that person to hear.
Mhm.
So sometimes less is actually more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most times less is actually more.
Yes. Yeah.
And I have an ability to care about a large capacity of people at any given time. And so I don't expect everyone to be remember everybody and care about everybody, whatever. It's just, there are some people that I have come across that for whatever reason, they really stick. They really stand out.
Mm-hmm.
And this person was one of them. And that's why I asked that. But
Right.
not to say that everybody has to
No,
take this
no.
so far.
Well, and it doesn't work that way, right? I mean, with all the people that we interact with, we know this from our own neurology.
Mhm.
We are not necessarily going to connect or remember every single thing about every single person, at least not in our conscious memory, right? Our brains take in every single thing we look at, every single interaction we have, and it files it away. But it sorts them into the order of importance,
Mhm.
right? And the ones that aren't important get pushed to get put in the files way back in the dusty parts of our brain, right, where nobody ever touches it, right? Like that final scene in Indiana Jones where they put the Ark in the middle of the warehouse. That's an old movie. I know she's looking at me
Never
like,
seen that movie.
oh my goodness, that's a whole other episode right there. But
Oh,
nevertheless,
boy.
those that get filed away, and the ones that resonate with us do tell us to a certain degree about what things we value or what things resonate with us. And certainly in the case of the person you're talking about, her story 6 to 8 months ago must have been something in your neurology went, that's important for me to hold on to and put a tab on that.
Mm-hmm.
So on one level, I think it's important for us to know that about ourselves, about our neurology, about our biology, and to recognize and accept that we're not always going to flag all of that. How many times has it happened to you, Ashley, where you see somebody and they start reminding you of something they told you about, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember you told me about that.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have remembered. If
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that person's not important or the story wasn't important. It just means it didn't get flagged. Now we have the ability to then flag it right there and go, I think it's going to be important for me to remember this going forward. So, and oftentimes just doing that helps the brain prioritize it and go, okay, we need to keep this, somewhere nearby. right? I think it's then another series of steps to how often and how willing and how able can we be then to take the next step beyond that of perhaps initiating, if appropriate, initiating a follow-up somewhere down the line going, hey, you know what, I was thinking of you. That's probably for people that are closer in your life.
Sure.
Wanted to check in and see how you're doing. I know when those moments happen for me, I feel so great, even if I'm feeling terrible at the time. Wow, this person out there reached out to me, was thinking about me in this moment, wanted to know how I was doing.
You know, I'll admit something to all of our listeners.
Oh boy.
There's times
I don't know, it's exciting.
My memory is pretty stellar, but it's not perfect. So there are times, just saying, there are times I will actually, if somebody shares something with me and I'm like, I care about this person and it's important to me that I follow up with them because they are important to me. I will actually, in my little notes app in my phone, write it down.
Really?
Yes.
You pick a date?
I could. Well, I mean, like if I might like write the date of like, this person told me this. And so, you know, like maybe once a month or whatever, I'll like review through it and be like, oh man, I should probably check in with that person because I remember they told me that.
That's a pretty
And this
one.
only comes, I know I'm going to admit that it helps. So just, you know, tip for y'all. But there are sometimes people that are in my closer circle that I do talk to often, and they will share something with me that's like, you know, a big deal for them. And it's almost expected or assumed that because we're so close, I should remember this because we're so close and we talk a lot. It's like their reality is almost as if it's my reality because of how often.
Oh, yeah, because they're in that inner circle.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember.
Oh.
And I'm like, why don't I remember that? And I'm like, should have written it down. And then I'll beat myself up for it. Be like, well, why didn't you remember? This is a close person that, you know, they're like, you care so much about them. Like this, you should have had that in the non-dusty section in your brain. And somehow it got filtered to that side. And that could just happen because you're busy.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that that person doesn't matter. And so if you experience something like that on the reverse side where you're like, I shared with them a week ago that I'm struggling. And they asked me today, like, how's your job? And you're like, well, I lost it last week. I already told you this, you know, awkward. But then you can still say like, you know what? You did tell me that.
You did tell me that.
I am so sorry.
I'm sorry.
You know, and to be honest, you can recover that. And then you can move forward and ask them like, okay, so now that we've gotten past my forgetfulness, how are things?
Right. Yeah. Situation for me when that happens from either direction is to remember that there is a difference in everybody's daily lives between what is universally important and what is pressing in that moment. And just because something might be more pressing, work stress, relationship stress, life stress in general, that is taking up more of the bandwidth, more of the attention, more of the time, doesn't necessarily make that other person or what they shared with you less important. It's just other things are more pressing. And sometimes if that keeps happening, you can suggest to this person, which I've done before, hey, I'd like some times where I'm feeling a little more pressing, right? Then a little, you know, not just important. I've actually said that, you know,
yes, you have.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, Ashley, you're one of those people. That's right.
I know.
Yeah. We actually talked about that on an episode not too long ago. But I think there is a difference. And for me, that helps me in the moment be a little more forgiving if somebody did forget, you know, or didn't recall it immediately. But then also to give myself a little bit of grace when I'm the one, right, who either didn't follow up or something like that. Okay, no, there's some things been pressing. And if those things are things that are worth being pressing and not just me in my own head mulling around, then that's one thing. But if I do in that moment go, okay, yeah, I've been in my head a little too much. I need to make some adjustments. That's an opportunity to kind of do some rebuilding, to do some repair, right, and learn something from it. Right. And it's that kind of intentionality. And notice how we've gotten away when we do that from all the very things, the questions I asked at the front end. Is this about culture? Is this about, you know, is this about habit? Is this about self-protection? We're not doing any of those things. We use this question or the answer to it as an opportunity for self-reflection, right? Which does take some intention and does take some learning of how we do things, right? I have a friend of mine who we jokingly call me the historian of our friendship Because part because I'm a historian by background, but I'm the one who remembers what's on the list. We have a list.
You have a list?
We have a list, of things to follow up on, because sometimes our conversations can run so far afield and we don't always have a lot of time that it becomes, all right, I do want to share this with you, or I do want to talk to you about this, or I want to hear about this, but we don't have the time right now, so can put this on the list. And it's a literal list. And I've known this person for a very long time. And so I have a notebook of just that list.
Oh, snap.
For this person. Oh,
really?
And it's hilarious. Yeah, because sometimes I'm writing stuff down, like with the phone tucked in my ear, my shoulder, or I'm walking around somewhere, or I'm out and I'm driving. I was like, okay, well, I can't write this down right now, so I have to scribble it down when I have a moment. And so sometimes it's like in the margins, sometimes it's like all laid out in a nice paragraph, so we need to remember. It's like this really interesting book.
You guys really need to talk more.
Well,
you have a notebook full of things.
I'm certainly down for that. It's just one of those things that doesn't always quite work out, because two very, very busy people. But I love having the list, because I can always pull that out and go, okay, and sometimes you come back to it and you're like, okay, well, that moment passed a while ago. So I've
crossed that one out. Right. Check.
But I'm the historian who has to remember all these things. And I love that. Funny. And I love that. And that's because this person, the way they are wired, that is not something that they connect back to, but they're working on that. Very cool. I actually think they're a lot better at it than they say they are. But it is kind of a fun thing to do, right, with that. And it does, and it's allowed us a lot of give and take over the years, right, in terms of when something gets, doesn't get talked about.
It's like a diary. Do you ever flip back through and be like, hey, remember years ago we never covered that subject?
Oh, it's hilarious. Oh, yeah. Actually, we've done that. Yeah, every once in a while I'll flip back and go, oh, look what we forgot to talk about from 2 years ago.
That one.
Yeah, it's hilarious. So not that has to be done, but it's something that I have found in this particular case to be useful, because it recognizes in this case that, man, life just goes at life's pace.
Yeah.
Right? On life's terms. And we're not always going to remember to ask, and we're not always going to feel like we're in a mode to answer, honestly, because sometimes we can be so emotionally overloaded, still processing something out, still working something out, that we don't want to answer. And in those cases, the word can be, you know what, I'm still working through this. I'm not great, but I'm not sure what to say yet, but I so appreciate you asking, can we come back to this when I have better words? I'd love to, sit down with you, have a cup of coffee. That's those words, again, expressing really what is happening in the inner world in that moment. I think connecting with that is key.
Real blatant, obvious description. Like, sometimes it seems ridiculous because you're like, well, it's obvious. It's like, it really is helpful.
It is.
To literally say, I don't have the words.
Yeah. Here's the words I have. I don't have them. But I care.
But I
care. And I'm going to show you that I care. Right? And body language and all that kind of stuff matters too.
Well, right? Yes, because, you can show care to somebody that you don't know how to speak their language.
That's true.
So body language can trump words sometimes. And,
absolutely.
If it's appropriate, don't make it weird. But, sometimes just being like a hand on their forearm or something, or a hand on their hand, just a simple touch of hey, I'm here. Small connection, not awkward, under consensual situations. So, where it's all appropriate. But even something like that is just I see you and I feel what's going on. And I'm trying to translate to you that.
Yeah.
Makes a difference.
Absolutely. It does. It does. All right. Ooh, lots of different currents running now. So this is fun. But it is time to take another break. So we'll be back in just a minute. When we come back, we're going to talk about some practical ways that you can be looking to develop this reflex a little bit more. And of course, we'll be coming back with our 2 minutes of triumph here in just a minute. You don't want to miss that. It's going to be fun. See you in a minute.
Hello, I'm Chris Erdman. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creative minds, and game changers to uncover the real stories behind their business. On my show, Made of More, we explore the challenges that they've overcome, the breakthroughs that they've celebrated, and the mindset that drives them forward. If you're ready to unlock your full entrepreneurial potential, Made of More is the show for you, because here we know you are made of more. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with Ashley.
Hi.
Talking about that ever-present question that we hear and say every day, how are you? and that there's a lot more to it than we think. And it's actually, there's a great opportunity every time we ask it and every time we answer it to really connect with somebody else, even in a small way or a big way, depending on who the person is. But before we get back into that, let's do our weekly segment where Ashley and I each take 2 minutes to talk about something that happened during the week. It's usually a triumph or a terror, so you have to wait for each episode to find out which one it is. Today, we're so excited that it is a triumph. Here we go.
Yes!
All right. For those of you watching on the stream, I point at the camera every single time. All right, Ashley, what's your triumph for the week?
I am so excited because mine happened like an hour before I came into the studio.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. This is probably one of the very first times, actually, this has happened. I had somebody who I did not know, and I did not know was a listener. But he was a young gentleman. So like nothing I don't know what I was expecting for listeners, but it was very out of the blue. I was introduced to him and we were working on a business thing. And then before he left, he's like, "You have a podcast?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." And then he proceeds to tell me that there's a particular episode he listened to recently and how great it was and his thoughts were about it. And that he's like, "I just want you to know I really like your show and you have a loyal listener."
Wow.
Came out of the blue. And like I said, from a younger gentleman that I never would have, I guess, I'm like, I don't even know how he knew about it. But I was amazing. Like, it was so exciting for someone to say like, "Hey, I listen to your show. I check in all the time."
That's so great.
It really meant a lot. So we're very humble about our show. We love what we're doing here. But like having that feedback or that support is like huge.
So, hey, loyal
really
listener,
cool.
Thanks for being a loyal listener.
Yes.
We appreciate
very
that.
appreciated.
That's awesome. That has to feel really great.
It was cool. It was really cool.
That's great. All right. Well, my triumph of the week was I tapped into my inner little kid this week. I went and saw the new Superman movie.
Oh, my goodness.
And the reason why that was such a big deal was when I was a kid, it's one of the first movies I remember seeing. It was the original Superman with Christopher Reeve. I think I was 6 or 7 when it came out.
Oh, my God, little guy.
And it's Superman. It was the first lunchbox I had in kindergarten was those metal Superman one.
Yes.
Right? And he was the big deal. Now, Star Wars was a big deal too. So, between the two. But Superman was the first one that I just remember being wide-eyed and seeing. And it was a superhero, right? Well, and the new Superman that just came out took me back to that.
Oh, very cool.
In part, it's because the tone of it is so different. Superhero movies, which I love, last decade or so tend to be pretty dark, pretty grim. The stakes, of course, are always huge in it's of the universe or of the world or somebody's soul or whatever. So dramatic. But in this case, the tone of this was fun. It was hopeful, but it still felt very real. It didn't seem sugar-coated. It didn't seem shallow. I really, really liked it. And it just filled me with so much kid-like enthusiasm that I was almost cheering at the end of the movie at various points. I remember going to see the movie the first time and yelling out in the theater, "Go Superman," when I was like 6.
Yeah.
And it was sort of
you
like
didn't do that this time?
No, I didn't do that this time. But there were moments where I was like, wow, right? And there's a really cool dog in it, by the way, which was awesome.
Okay.
Anyway, it was just fun to tap into that and
Very
to
cool.
indulge in that a little bit.
Well, because there is something to be said about childlike wonder and joy. It's so pure.
It is.
And it's so good-natured.
Well, and joy is all around us if we're willing to find it and willing to allow ourselves to feel it. It was just one of those moments. And of course, it got me reflecting on what are the other ways that I can tap into this, right, going forward in ways that aren't destructive, like, doing the dumb things I used to do as a kid, like riding a big wheel on the roof of my house. That's a whole other story.
Wow.
Yeah, I did that as a kid. That's the story for another day. Anyway, my dad remembers that.
I'm sure.
Anyway. And Dad, if you're listening, and I know you are, thanks for getting me off the roof without a problem and not punishing me too severely for that. Okay. All right. So, Ashley, let's bring this back to this question. Wow. Ooh, that was interesting.
Where did you go?
I don't know. We're back.
On the roof.
We're back on the roof. All right. And actually, it was a Superman big wheel. Look at that.
Oh, my goodness. It came full circle. Wow. No
It's a
wonder he kept
Superman big
rattling
wheel.
off. Okay.
I thought I was going to fly.
Wow.
Which
you thought you were being Superman.
I thought
You're
I
like, I'm
was.
going to try this out. How does he do it in the movie?
Right.
Okay, whoops.
Yeah, Dad got me in enough time. All right. Okay. So talking about this question, again, it's not a right or wrong thing. It's just so much of what we work on, Ashley, when we talk with clients and that we work on with ourselves is about the awareness of how we show up, asking the questions about why do we show up that way? Mm-hmm. What are ways to better show up for myself, for other people in ways that are constructive, that build a better life and a better sense of being for me and for them and for society at large by extension. So let's talk about some things that we can do, that listeners can do to cultivate a little bit more of this intentionality. Mm-hmm. So what comes to mind for you first with that?
Well, I would say for the common folks, because, people will go to coaching, therapy, whatnot, because they know that is a intentional space where they are seen and heard and understood, and people, quote unquote, matter. You might be, or they care about you. You might be paying them, but they are there for you.
Right. And you're open to doing some work, hence why you're there.
Right. And that's always a decision made prior. But for those who are in just the day-to-days, one thing I would say is when you don't have the right words, or you feel like you don't have the right words, but you still want to show some sort of care, one thing that you can do is pay attention to the person that is sharing these things with you, and you can verbalize things of like, you look really distressed. Mm-hmm. You look like something is not right. Mm-hmm. If you can't name it, which sometimes it's better not to name it because you don't want to say something to make it worse. You can say are you okay? It just looks like something is not okay.
Mm-hmm. An observation.
Yeah. Simple observation. Or, if you notice they're starting to get teary-eyed and you have a tissue box nearby, the simple act of handing them a tissue or some little generous act, but really just taking a moment to notice them and observe and mention that you are observing something about them still tells them, I see you and I am trying to figure something out and show you that I care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it seems like a really ridiculous gesture.
Oh.
But it still conveys a message, and a very loud message.
It does, particularly when that person is very vulnerable in that moment. Yeah, it's amazing what we can notice if we just pay attention. That helps build the habit, because we all have tells. We all like to think that we can just mask things up, and some people are better at it than others. But our body language, right? You mentioned the eyes tearing up. That's a dead giveaway. Skin getting flushed for some people, right? People getting fidgety, moving around, shoulders hunched, right? If they're standing or sitting, right? Those types of things. Just the look on people's faces. And if we're coming into it from a position of intentionality, we're going to pick up on that energy that person is putting out. That's going to tell us, right? And our bodies take in that information, right? And go, okay, something is off,
right,
with this. It's funny, and sometimes it can happen if you're not in the same room with the person, right? The other day, you and I had a phone call, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where you called me up at a time you don't normally call, right? And I just kind of blazed in, was chatting about something right away, something that was, about the podcast.
I remember that.
And then 15 minutes after I, started talking, I said,
he finally paused.
I paused, and all of a sudden I picked up on something that you hadn't responded with that kind of the way you normally do with like a funny joke or like, oh my gosh, did you even take a breath? You normally say something like that.
Yeah.
But instead there was nothing, and all of a sudden I picked up on this, oh, are you all right? Like, suddenly I went, all these pieces came together, calling at a different time than usual, haven't given her any space to say anything. And what was your response?
No, I'm actually not all right.
And then we had a conversation.
Although you being you did bring some humor to it, because it was a rough moment and I needed some very quick advice. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I'm really upset right now. I need some help. He is going off about something else. Do I interject and be like, JD, I called you. It's my time right now. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just sit here while I'm upset and hold space for JD while he's just rambling on. But he had some good things to talk about. So you were very excited, right? But JD is also very good at reading the room. And when he took a moment to, with his ears, read the room and realize like, oh, wait. So her normal cues are not coming along.
They were not
like
there.
Something's not right.
They were not there.
You were and then you were correct, and then it all worked out. I was able to share my piece, and I was fine.
Yeah.
But I would say if you also observe somebody and they are like very, very upset, and you start to inquire, and they are a bit dismissive, that is also a cue that it is okay to stop asking, because there are some times when people they're just handling something very personal and they don't want to talk about it, or they're like, I am barely holding it together. If I even talk, the floodgates are going to come open and I'm just going to lose it.
Yep.
So it is also okay to like understand that cue of like, maybe they're not comfortable sharing. That's okay. You don't have to keep inquiring.
Right, exactly. And I think in a moment like that, that's where the intention of active listening and paying attention to those cues, and then perhaps ask another question. Would it be best for us not to talk about this right now?
Yeah. Would you prefer to have some space?
Yeah. I mean, again, using the words to actually express what you're feeling or wondering, as opposed to trying to find the right thing, right? We're always trying to make somebody feel better, which I think comes from a good space.
Yeah.
But it's not really what's the reality. Because as we've talked about on this show quite a bit, we learn lessons and apply lessons almost solely from difficulty, right? Or if we have a triumph, we reflect back and go, oh, okay, I should celebrate this triumph because these other things, right? I have perspective from the times where we had terrors, right? Or defeats, those types of things. We give someone a gift when we remind them through either giving them that space or listening, that active listening, that they are valued, that they have a place, that they have worth, that in that moment, they're the most pressing thing, right?
Yep.
And if that part of that pressing is they need to step away, there's a good chance they're going to come back at some point and say, you know what, I'm sorry in that moment. I didn't have much, right? And then we give them a soft place to land, right?
Yeah.
Those things matter. So I think that listening, that intentional presence, making eye contact, putting away the distractions, put the phone away. I know when those things happen to me unexpectedly, if I have my phone in my hand, I put it in my pocket or I put it in my bag, or I'll even say, give me a second. I'm just going to put this away, right? Because those things get in the way.
Yeah.
Right?
When you can use, as to wrap up this, you can even do this from afar too. I do remember at one point this was actually like, it's just really difficult. I was driving on the road and we came to a stoplight and I'm just bored looking around and I look in to the lane next to me and there's a girl there and she is just sobbing, like just having some sort of rough moment. And I'm like, in that moment, I just said like a little prayer, send some good wishes. I'm like, she's seriously struggling, but I hope she's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, sometimes that's all we can do right, with that. Ooh, man, we ran right up against it, Ashley.
Here we are.
Look at that. What a great topic for today. Thank you so much for sharing that story and all the insights for that. And we hope for all of you listening that these provided you with some things to think about and to apply and to kind of learn from as we go. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Staying Power. We will be back next week with another episode to talk about something else to help build a better life. And still then, I will be JD.
And I will always be Ashley.
Always be Ashley. And we will see you next week. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.